right, welcome in everyone. We'll let folks continue to trickle in as we get started here, but thank you all so much for being here and joining us tonight. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Chris Goodnow. I'm the VP of Programming for AMA Boston. And we're joined tonight by our rockstar panelists that you see in front of you here on the screen. And I'll turn it over to them in just a second. But before we do, I want to just go over a few housekeeping things for you tonight. If my screen wants to coordinate with me, hold on one second here, everyone. There we go. All right. So we're going to kick things off tonight once I'm done with my spiel here, taking a look at some of the Super Bowl ads from both this year and some of the greatest and worst all-time ads. So we'll dive right into those. And then we're going to have a little bit of a discussion with our panelists here, talking about trends we're seeing in digital marketing and advertising, and some that's going to kind of overlap with what we're talking about tonight. So, and then we'll have time at the end for audience questions. So feel free to add those into the chat as we're talking tonight. We'll field those as we go, but you'll also, just so you know, have time to ask and come off mute and ask the speakers questions at the end. So a few housekeeping things for tonight. Please do keep your mics muted. Want to try to avoid as much audio disruption as possible throughout the conversation. Like I said, if you have questions, add those to the chat. We'll go through those as we go. The event's being recorded, so we'll be getting that out to everybody that signed up via email in the next few days, so be on the lookout for that as well. And then feel free to take any photos, videos, share any content related to the event in real time or after the event on social. And if you do, use the hashtag AMA Boston so that we can find and connect with your posts. We love seeing everyone's stuff on social there, so feel free to do that if you'd like. A little bit about who we are at AMA Boston, if you're not familiar with who we are. We are the educational and networking hub for New England marketers. So we cover the entire New England region, not just the Boston region as our name suggests. So we have quite a large community. If you're considering or thinking about how can you get involved with the chapter, there's a few ways. One is starting off as a volunteer. So we have volunteer opportunities open across all of our teams right now. Maybe you are transitioning careers, or you're looking to add a new skill set to your resume, or even if you're just looking to build your network, joining as a volunteer is a great way to do so. Also, another way to get involved is to join by becoming a member of AMA. We offer a lot of really great benefits, things like discounts on all of our future events. There's member-only event opportunities to network with other members of AMA Boston. So we have one of those coming up, our first one of the year in the spring. So that'll be coming up in, I believe, in April. Things like exclusive tools and resources on our website. So a lot of really great member benefits that we offer. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, feel free to find one of our board members in the chat and connect with them. They'll give you a little bit more insight into what that entails and how you can get signed up with the chapter. And then we have different pricing tiers as well. If you're a student, we offer discounts there. Maybe you're considering joining with some friends or colleagues. We have group discounts. So a lot of different pricing tiers. And like I said, if you're interested in learning a little bit more, feel free to chat with one of our board members in the call tonight. Some of our upcoming events, actually this coming Tuesday, February 2nd at 7 p.m., we have a Twitter chat with Michelle Martin, SVP at LL Bean. So if you have Twitter, and if you don't have Twitter, you can find the link on our website of how to access that. I'll be sure to drop it in the chat after I'm done talking, so you can all navigate there and sign up if you'd like. We also have a marketing mingle event coming up in March, on March 17th, the Thursday at 6 p.m. For those of you that may not have been to one of those before, at least when we've done them virtually, we'll have a guest speaker that's soon to be announced coming for that. And then we leave time the second half of the event for breakout rooms and networking opportunities. So we'll drop the link to that as well in the chat if anybody's interested in learning more or signing up. All right, and without further ado, I wanted to introduce tonight's speakers to you. I won't give their backgrounds, I'll let them speak for themselves, but moderating tonight's discussion is Megan McGrath, our immediate past president of AMA Boston, also marketing director at BTS. And then joining her for our panel of speakers tonight is Laura Kopp, SVP of Integrated Marketing at Archetype, Jen Falcon, Global Marketing and Communications Leader, Brian Grossman, Director of Brand Strategy at 36 Creative, and Sarah Goldsmith, VP of Creative Director at Arnold Worldwide. And I will stop sharing, and Megan, I will turn it over to you.
Chris, you beat me to everyone's name and title. Now I don't have to mispronounce anything. Well, welcome everyone, and good to see you all here. This is one of my favorite nights of the year where we get to speak with some of the area's best and brightest minds in the agency space. So many of you are always interested in these events, and we're really glad to have you here tonight. Just to get things started, throw your contact info or the reason you're here in the chat. We like to connect everyone as the conversation's flowing. Also throw maybe your favorite NFL team. There is only one right answer. We might boot you out of the meeting if you get it wrong, but just kidding, definitely do that. And we're gonna be pulling you throughout so that you can react to the ads that we're watching as well. Panelists, anything you wanna say to start? Maybe your favorite NFL team or just a hey, how are you?
I was not told we would be speaking about sports tonight. So I have nothing to contribute in that realm. I'm so sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. Many people watch the Super Bowl just for the ads and the halftime show. So that's probably going to be a joke that we throw around here tonight. Brian, Sarah, Jen, anything from you?
Yeah, I didn't watch much of the game, but I spent a lot of time on Twitter making rude comments about advertisers' work, which I will not do tonight, except on a couple of specific spots. But there was definitely a lot of chatter this year about the ads. So it's really exciting to be on this panel and get to speak with some great experts on the topic.
Brian, I think this is an AMA Boston first to have a bird on our virtual panel. So does this friend have a name?
This is not actually a bird. This is a drone.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
They're same difference. Yeah, this is Scrubby. So her cage is on the other side of the room, but if she was in there, she'd be screaming through the entire thing because she's strongly opinionated about advertising. So it's just better to let her watch. So yeah.
Well, next time we'll throw her picture up on the introduction card and tell her our apologies are sent.
It's all right. Well, I'll be hearing about it later, I'm sure, but it's fine.
All right, well, let's jump into the ads. Chris, why don't you roll up the first one? What we're gonna do tonight is start with 3 ads from this year's Super Bowl, and then we're gonna take a look at 3 from all-time greats years past. So feel free to throw reactions in the chat. Chris will give you a feature to vote so our panelists can see if they agree with your voting or not about whether the ads are good. And then we'll wrap with some questions from on trends and industry and all that good stuff. All right, Chris, go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, our takeover of General Motors is complete.
Dr. Abel, GM's Ultium platform will power our whole operation.
Now we can reduce tailpipe emissions.
Oh, please, tears.
For my son.
Your son? I shall name him Baby Me.
No, his name is Kyle.
Oh!
You must help save the world first.
Then you can take over that world. Hold on, I've got it. I will help save the world first, then take over the world.
She literally just said that.
Scott, you just don't get it, do you?
What?
You don't get it.
We're right back to you.
You're never gonna get it.
You can't draw me in the middle. You act like a child. You can't push my buttons anymore.
Oh!
We'll reduce our carbon footprint.
Okay, let's go. We're going all electric.
Everybody in!
Not you, Scott. Bye-bye, baby me.
All right, ad number 1 down. Laura, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. So, I counted 7 electric vehicle spots in the Super Bowl this year, which is super exciting. I could be wrong, but I think that got up to 7. And I think that this is exciting for a couple of reasons. I mean, this is probably the first year we've had this many electric vehicles featured, a glimpse into the future, which is obviously one that could be a long way off. I think that electric vehicles today represent about 10% of cars sold globally, less than 1% of cars sold in the US. So that's the brief right there. We have car manufacturers who are really trying to go mainstream with something that up until maybe this year didn't feel like the right fit for the Super Bowl. And I do love that there were almost every car ad featured electrical vehicles. There was even a super short spot for a charger, I think a 15-second spot. And so we're really getting a glimpse into kind of what's to come. The spot that we just watched, the GM spot, I think is a really good one. I know Jen has some strong thoughts too about the BMW spot that featured Arnold Schwarzenegger. And so I think, we're going to see neck and neck this space continue to grow. And I'd be curious to know what, if there were other ads that you guys thought within the electric vehicle space that stood out more than this one. This one obviously played on nostalgia for people, really tapping into Austin Powers of yesteryear, which is probably a theme for the whole Super Bowl. Many of the celebrity spots really did that. So too with the spot that featured The Sopranos, an electric vehicle for Chevy. So again, I think we're trying to get people comfortable with the idea of electric vehicles. I loved BMWs just because it kind of combined sex appeal and masculinity using Arnold Schwarzenegger and Salma Hayek. But again, lots to pull out here. And I see that you guys gave it about an average rating of a B. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, I'll build off of that. I worked on GM for a couple decades, and I thought Commonwealth McCann, their agency, had a banner night on Sunday night. Their best spot by far was the Sopranos ad. They got David Chase to direct it. I thought it was the only one of the electric vehicles ads that made electric cars sexy. And there's nothing like Meadow coming with just like a little lollipop in her mouth. It was just sexier than Selma Hayek over here with Schwarzenegger, which I thought it was a big miss for BMW, because BMW is supposed to be about sex appeal. But now I want to go buy, a big Chevy truck with a big, back panel. I want to be Meadow. And the fact that Meadow and AJ were alive was a big moment for the night. But I also think the other spot that was great for Evie, which was really late in the game, so I was a little too buzzed to really notice, but I saw it later, was the Kia spot with the robot dog. I think Kia had a great night, and the one with Eugene Levy was also really good. I think the later in the game, they got lost, and I didn't really notice how great they were until I started watching the spots the next day. But to me, the winner of the night for electric was Sopranos and Chevrolet.
I'm with you, Jen. I thought the Sopranos one was brilliant. They barely even showed the car, which is crazy. I mean, especially during the Super Bowl, it's like, I think it's an interesting comparison to talk about BMW versus Chevy. And I mean, it's just like expensive celebrities, super high production value, versus, Laura, like your theme of the night is just that nostalgic throwback, but done in a really different way. It was like, it felt kind of special. I'm curious, Laura, we were talking about this a little bit, just that there's all this repetitive nostalgia from a very similar genre, the Michelob Ultra, Big Lebowski one. But it all seems like, it seems like it's tapping such a particular generation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was listening to some Twitter conversations on this too, because I think there was this overwhelming sense of who are these Super Bowl ads for? We're throwing back to 2004. We're throwing back to way before 2004. Are we, speaking to an audience that's older, maybe, missing out on a whole Gen Z audience, younger sports fans who are tuned in? And I also think it's, though, very possible, and I saw this kind of come up in some of the conversations online, that, Gen Z is an exceptionally nostalgic group of folks for whom time does not exist. They've grown up online.
Thanks a lot, Laura.
Well, these moments are memes, and memes don't really have a date attached to them. So, I could see both sides of it. I do think it's so interesting. I saw the average age of the celebrities who were featured in ads, was I think over 50 or 60. So it's just kind of an interesting consideration as we're thinking about talent to put in spots, I think the first ad I saw had Zendaya, a very, very trendy person, but we went probably up in age from there.
Yeah, it was
Great.
really interesting seeing a throwback to Austin Powers in particular. I felt very seen as an elder millennial. Like, I was just like, oh, you're talking to me. You want my money now. I love that for me. And it was, I think that was after Chevy, that was probably my favorite of the automotive ads. The only reason I had mixed feelings about it was because it was an electric ad, but overall it was like, can we maybe talk about how we're improving on, being sustainable and environmentally responsible in a way that's not as like heavy on Mike Myers. Like maybe this could have been a play that was a little bit more emotional. I know that the Super Bowl is like, I mean, humor overall is the best device for me, I feel. And Super Bowl is the time to do that. But maybe doing something that was a little bit like pulling at heartstrings might have been more appropriate when they like very recently were getting criticized for that. But I have to echo everything that everybody was saying about the Soprano spot. I wanted the song, I wanted the truck, I wanted the lollipop, I wanted the entire experience. It was amazing. I loved everything about it.
I wanted to binge 6 seasons starting that night.
Yes, for serious.
It's so funny you say that, Sarah, because that's exactly what I tweeted. I said, oh, great. Now I got to binge all 6 seasons. See you later. Turn off the Super Bowl. So there was a lot of that. I just like, we wanted the season to come back because we love them so much.
Brian, it's interesting what you say about, we didn't see a lot of like emotional, sentimental stuff. It's almost all comedy, almost all of it. And I think that's why the Budweiser one flopped so bad, is because like, nobody wants to feel like a lot of feelings,
Totally.
It's like an optimistic time at this point. Things like in our world are getting better, or like micro worlds are like, big picture, small picture, hopefully.
Right.
And I just don't think people wanted to feel heaviness right now. So it was, unfortunate for them because that, I've done some great stuff in the past with the Clydesdales, and people come to expect it. So I'm sure the brief that those creatives got were, they're kind of, backed into a little bit of a hole, but I just thought it was, on the other side of it, just so cool that everybody went for comedy, because we do see those trends. There was like this advertising era of, 2013, 14, 15. Thank God we're out of that, right? But it was like everybody was just inspired to make something funny, which I thought was very cool.
It was. I feel like you're saying, people are just exhausted, and so many people wanted to respond to the pandemic. It's like, okay, we get it. Just entertain me, please. Just let me separate. I get it. I've seen it. I've lived it. I've been here. I have the sweatpants. I can write the blog article. I'm here for it, but let's move on. So that particular ad, and it was just like the entire time I was watching, not to get off topic and dig into Budweiser, but it was like I was watching that ad and I was like, please let this be about something else, because I don't want this. I loved the representation that was going on in that ad. I loved the director. I loved the talent. I love everything about it, but I love the dog. But having to experience something that was so like, yeah, I know. Okay, thank you. Just like, having something at the end where they're like, I don't know, pull out someone funny, just like, oh, just kidding, this was a gag the entire time. We had, Walter Valderrama right here the entire time, and that was what we were waiting to reveal.
Well, you can tell we have a smart and engaged audience over here, because the chat is blowing up with predictions for commercials that we're going to be showing before too long. So hang in there, guys. Chris, let's roll the second spot. I think we have Google Pixel up next.
People with darker complexions have always struggled with having good lighting.
Every single yearbook photo of mine has been terribly shot since I was a kid.
I always show up as too dark or shiny. 'Cause if you love me, you love all of me. Everything the light touches. Oh, baby, give me light touches. Oh, yeah.
right, panelists, over to you. Thoughts? Sarah?
It was one of my faves. It was that one, that one, it was a little bit more somber, but also joyful. And as creatives, we I work at an ad agency, and we see trends from our perspective, which is the briefs that we get. And it's because our clients are asking for it and they have research that backs it up. But we get on the receiving end of a lot of diversity briefs, and they're all kind of the same. It feels like a lot of pandering, and brands don't have a reason to inject in the conversation at all. In this case, though, it was perfect. It was like creatively such a simple concept. They brought it to life beautifully, and they had a reason to talk about it, which is something that their product, it's a solution to a problem that's really, really important and painful to people. And also the camera, I want that camera. They did a beautiful job of bringing Lizzo in and having her just be the track and be the face at the end without overpowering it. I thought they used a lot of restraint there. So yeah, I thought that it was a special one. It was unique, and it definitely juxtaposed to some of the comedy without making me feel bad for them, like the Budweiser one. But I'm curious, what did everybody else think of that one?
Yeah, I love that ad, but as a Super Bowl ad, I think it got lost. I didn't even see it until afterwards. But I think what's really powerful about that ad is the consumer insight. Everyone needs to be seen as they truly are. That is a very powerful consumer insight. It's not about the product. It's not about what the product delivers. It's about the person, not a consumer, not someone who buys something. That's very powerful for Google. I think it's going to really break through for them. And I think that spot will live as it builds in the awareness wherever it's placed, but it's going to have to be placed outside of the Super Bowl for people to really connect with it.
Yeah, likewise, I think that if you take a step back and look at all of Google's work recently, it's all been quite emotional. And so you can definitely see their brand strategy coming clearly through now, which is to humanize this very tech brand and to make moments more meaningful for people. So I think that this is a nice example of that. It's very much in line with a lot of their other spots that they put out recently, but I don't hate that for them. I think that's probably right where they need to be.
Yeah, they did it. Everything about the ad was executed so smartly. Lizzo was the perfect person to have as the musical talent, being a woman of color, but also being so body positive. She was, perfect. It was timed after the halftime, which featured predominantly Black artists and was, I think, the most heavily hip hop centric halftime show that there ever was. So it was, everything about it was just set up in a way that was perfectly strategic, not just in the expression of the brand, but also how do we frame this in the best way that it needs to be framed.
Yeah, it's funny that you raise celebrities, Brian, because I think as we were prepping for this call, we were all noticing how over-reliant these spots were on celebrities. And over the last couple of years, we don't really care about celebrity. You have to use a celebrity in a spot where it really works. And this spot used the celebrity in a way that she embodies that consumer insight. And there were a lot of spots, and this is why, Laura, I don't like the BMW spot, because I don't know how Salma Hayek and Schwarzenegger really represent BMW. I think Clive Owen in a nice dark suit with well, that's just personally me, that he embodies that sexiness and that performance of a vehicle. I think that's what's important about a spot like this. If you're going to use a celebrity, it has to come from their brand essence and what's real, and that's what makes the spot work.
Totally. I love what you just pointed out. And there were absolutely so many flops. I have woken up numerous times in the middle of the night over how Uber Eats misused Jennifer Coolidge, who is literally a national treasure. I talk about hot dogs on a daily basis because of her. And that, like, I'm so upset. If you go there, I have a petition, everybody sign it so that we can reshoot that ad and be what it was. It's very important. But no, like, it's really like the difference between choosing the right person, like you said, to represent the brand essence, and bringing out a dog and pony show where it's like, how many things can we pack into this ad and have people go, oh, I know that person, I know that thing. It's like, you know, strategic versus, you know, ridiculous.
Great. Authenticity comes to mind for me. I think it's just a very authentic, seamless brand integration. Not that I'm in your space, but certainly a fan of that one. All right, Chris, you know what? Let's zip along to our third spot, which I think some people in the chat were eager to check out and get some reactions to, Coinbase.
I know everyone's going to have something to say about this one, but I'll just kick things off. So if it wasn't like the night of electric vehicles, it was the night of crypto, right? Felt like those were the two big categories getting tons of airtime. And we all just felt that 60-second spot. It felt long now. It felt long when I was watching it during the Super Bowl. Like, that's a long time to have a bouncing QR code across the screen. That being said, this spot has, we've probably all read the headlines, has broken so many records and has a lot of data to back it up, because that QR code drove people right to a landing page where they could download the app. Now, the big criticism that they got, you know, whether this was engineered or not, was that it was so much traffic, 20 million hits, that the page crashed. And so who knows what kind of spillage there was on that. But if you think about, like, the viewership of the Super Bowl is about 115 million, and 20 million hits on a website is an incredible conversion rate. And so there's no arguing there. Obviously, too, I think you know, QR codes have had this unbelievable rise after being kind of the marketing joke for a really long time. You know, the pandemic has made them practically mainstream for many people, or if at least, you know, understood in a certain way. And so we saw that kind of come to life. And I think the last bit for me on this, and I'd love to hear the rest of the panel's thoughts too, you know, if you're not going to follow the rules, break all of them. And I think that's what this spot did. It shattered all of the best practices of branding and storytelling, but it got people talking. And so I think for that reason alone, it was incredibly provocative. In many ways, you'll probably all remember too, like is very reminiscent of that 5-second spot from last year's Super Bowl, what that Reddit did. That was just like a WTF moment in the game where everyone was talking about it the next day.
Yeah, leave it to a digital agency to blow shit up. Accenture Interactive has really started to make their mark globally in how they change digital, but also branding. You know, my one question about this is, will this ad ever run again? Probably not. But I've been watching the CMO, and she said we didn't do it to win awards, although we've won it. We won it to get new customers. I'm also surprised they did a 60-second. although you needed a lot of people who were drunk to figure out how to get their phone to get to the QR code. There's a lot of that actually happens at agencies when they say, well, drunk people get this. I know we did it at BBDO, we did it at McCann, we did it all. People have those conversations, but I think leave it to a digital agency to change the game, and they blew the whole model up, and that's what's interesting about it.
I liked this one a lot as well because I felt like it was so different for the Super Bowl in particular. And it was like, not to get, like I said, I think about Uber Eats and that terrible commercial every night because it really did cause me trauma. But that commercial was like the worst way to use memes. It was like your dad trying to figure out how to get onto Skype, like embarrassingly trying to use Facebook like it's Google. And the Coinbase ad was like how to capture the energy of meme culture perfectly, because it was just like if you weren't drunk and like doing this thing where you're like trying to scan it, like you were waiting, you're like, it's gonna hit the corner. It's gonna hit the corner. Oh yeah. Like that, like you were caught up in the thing that made that entire DVD moment magnetic. And it was just like so effortless, like QR code. The cherry on top would have been if their development team had thought about the server that they needed in order to execute on it.
I just saw a great comment in chat, and I wanted to call it out from Bob Cargill, who talked about this being really akin to kind of a direct marketing piece. And I think that's a great analogy, like super simple call to action, one thing to do. And so I just wanted to give that shout out because I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and Coinbase app is now #2 in the App Store. I mean, for those of us who use Coinbase and get crypto already, we're a little bit upset we didn't get our $15, but it did get a lot of people to go and say, okay, I'll buy $15 and see and learn. And that's what that Coinbase app is all about. Like, you don't have to spend more than $10, and they teach you about this new currency. It's about buying into this new environment and learning about it, not just like making money out of it. So there's something cool about that.
Across the board, the categories seem to be playing the FOMO card. Like, if you're not in this now, like you're missing out. And so I'll be interested to see how that does longer term, or if that evolves at all.
All right, well, fantastic. Thanks, guys. Let's move over to our greatest ads of all time category, where we have 3 to take a look at tonight. Chris, you want to cue up the first one?
Man, I might just chill tonight.
Puppy monkey baby. 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 Puppy monkey baby.
Mountain Dew Kickstart. Dew, juice, caffeine.
So Puppy Monkey Baby, I feel like I like that we had Coinbase and Puppy Monkey Baby, because there's a similarity between the two in that they're doing something that's like, really, is this what we're doing for the Super Bowl? Are we sure? Like, the confidence that goes into using advertising to this degree, where it's like combining these 3 animals that individually, monkey, puppy, baby, adorable, but together create this horrible creature that comes in and dances, like this level of humor that is very specifically speaking to a male audience, that like there's something about some men where it's like there's a point in their brain that doesn't evolve past high school, and it's always in the background waiting for certain words to be said, and then they silently giggle. Like when you say a sentence and the word do appears twice in succession, it's like, yeah, do. Like that is the level of humor that this is appealing to. And I feel like it gets the audience quite successfully in that this is an irreverent young male audience that has a really idiotic sense of humor. I think that the concept of combining the three things is a little bit dubious, like dew, juice, and caffeine is like, okay, I'm questioning how much juice is actually in this. I'm also questioning whether or not Mountain Dew does or doesn't have caffeine already. So that's a little weird. But I think overall it stands out to me, and it has a special place in my heart just because they did something that is leaving people questioning what it was that they saw.
This was the year where everybody did something totally whacked out. Like someone let their creative teams go just off the rails. But I think what I now try, I hate this ad, first of all, you could probably tell I hate this ad. And I hated it when it came out, but I didn't even realize there was a connection to the product until you just explained it. Like, because it was the year that everybody was trying to get to the what's up, or they were trying to get to that catchphrase or what. So that puppy monkey baby actually became a catchphrase for a while. And so it really caught on and it was considered the top ad that year. But if you're not part of the target audience, boy, does that like great. But it's just it's an amazing apparent connection to the product.
I had no idea either. I do wonder if this ad were to have launched today, you know, how it may have done or not fared. One thing that I think about now every time I see an ad is the music and the audio, because we know that there are channels now like TikTok where audio can take off in a completely different direction. And so I'm playing out in my mind this scenario possibly where this ad, if it launched today, became a whole other thing on TikTok as people were kind of reappropriating the sound, because the sound itself is very catchy. I have no idea. Now I know what it means, but anyways, that just kind of struck me at the time. I also hated this ad. I thought it was horrendous, but I also don't think it was made for me. So there's that.
It's funny that you mentioned TikTok because I can't remember, was it Starburst? It was like berries and cream. There was like the ads, I'm the little boy that loves berries and cream, that just recently, like Gen Z, were you guys even alive for that ad? Like, but someone somewhere saw it and they were like, yes, I will lip sync to this. And now all of a sudden it's a trending sound. It does absolutely have the stuff to go viral or become meme-like. And when they deployed this ad, they thought about that and they wanted that to happen. There were GIFs on Twitter before the ad was out. They it's commonplace now to release the ads before the Super Bowl, and they did it 3 times. They were like, no, we want to make sure that you guys see this because this is excellent. And, by excellent, I mean horrible. But there was a lot set up to make sure that this caught on in a way that was primed for the internet. So I think that definitely notes to be taken for anybody trying to recreate it today.
Well, I guess better to be intentionally awful than accidentally awful during the Super Bowl. So that's always something too. All right, Chris, cue up greatest ads of all time, spot number 2, which is an apple.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the incarnation purification of and in all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests, obeying contradictory rules. The force is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people. One will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall force themselves to death, and we will punish them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
I mean, it's so quintessentially 80s. I love everything about it so much. The voiceover, the scrolling text, it's the hairstyle of the athlete in the red shorts, Anya Major. Like, I love everything about it stylistically. But kind of like how Laura was talking just a minute ago about how Monkey Baby today might do something a little bit different. I liked this ad for a few reasons that had to do with what it was in 1984 and what it is now, or the reality of Apple is right now. So firstly, the strategy of the ad is so interesting because and maybe somebody on the panel can correct me, but I can't think of anything today that has, I'm going to say disruptor, and I apologize, that has like that energy where it's just like, we're going to start something. We're going to, like, don't settle for this, in a way where it's like we are attacking the status quo with a hammer. Like, that type of aggression just seems out of place in today's advertising. And then what's more is, at that time, of course, Apple was the rabble-rouser. They were the new kids. They were just about to launch their first personal computer, and IBM was which is hilarious, IBM was the big juggernaut in the room. And now today, that is the ad campaign someone should launch right now, is playing off of that as an upstart trying to take down Apple, because they've 100% become the big floating head in the room. So it's just interesting to see how a brand strategy that's arguably still rooted in innovation can evolve from the new kid on the block into, let's, do a keynote where we card out somebody in a turtleneck every so often to list out how our camera may or may not have been actually improved.
Yeah, it's a little ironic that we've been talking about the Coinbase ad today and how it's probably only going to run once, and this ad only ran once. And it probably wouldn't have been created if it didn't have Steve Jobs at the helm, who was already like that and just didn't really care about rules. It's not right for every brand, but advertisers still go back to this spot when they talk about what's great and best, because it's really easy for creative people to get their great ideas killed. As account people and strategy people, it's interesting that a lot of us on this panel come from those backgrounds, to kill an idea. But how do we as agency people help bring great creative ideas to our client and ensure it's on the brand strategy so it gets on air like this and changes the entire game for your brand? And that's what this spot does. And you've got to use it to inspire your creative teams and yourself to not kill great creative ideas.
Zooming into 2022, did you guys see the Apple Watch commercials recently? I was a pretty big fan of those. I thought those were really well done, where they rescue people with their watches. Kind of contrast there.
Yeah, again, like emotionally intense for an ad, an Apple Watch ad. Nonetheless, I was like, oh God, I don't know that I need this right now. I want the watch in case I'm drowning, but I don't. This is really heavy.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm an apocalypse geek, so my stepdad and I were chatting about that one for a little while. I was feeling like we were doing well by having Apple Watches. All right. We have a question in the chat, maybe worth noting. The question is, if an ad has to be explained, does that mean that it's failed?
I think it depends on what the goal of the ad is and what it accomplished. I think if the goal was to reach a wide audience and introduce new customers, but a very focused niche customer was the only one that understood and responded, then yeah, that's a fail. But if it was something that was speaking very specifically to a very focused audience, it's a choice to do it on the Super Bowl, which is like a very widely accessible platform. But if the goal was to just catch this very specific sweet spot of an audience, I don't know. If they understood, I don't know if that's a fail.
All right. Well, final ad of the night, and then we'll open it up to just some conversation and discussion about trends and such. Chris, you want to cue it up?
Mike, what is your deal, man?
Come on, man. You've been riding me all day.
Mike, you're playing like Betty White out there.
That's not what your girlfriend said.
Baby.
Whoa,
Eat a Snickers. Better?
Better. Hey! How about that? That hurt.
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies.
Rest in peace, Betty White. I love this spot so much. It's not only one of the best Super Bowl ads, it's one of the best ads of all time. And a personal story, I actually went to BBDO because they were doing this kind of quality of work. And when I actually started to talk to the creative guys about how they sold this work, because I'm always interested in how they got something through, they said, you know, that line, "You're not you when you're hungry," was not written by the creative guys. That was written by strategy. If you can't give your creative guys a line like that, you don't give them anything to work with. But then my next question is, it's almost a sexist ad. Like, she's like, "That's not what your girlfriend said." I said, "How did you get that through and sell it?" And they said, "You have to have the right person deliver the line, and it has to come from that consumer insight." And Betty White's the only friggin' comedian that can be like nice and old, but then, you know, you saw her Saturday Night Live stuff. It was pretty crude. Like, it broke through her career because she's that great. What's also amazing about that ad is you can't deliver lines like that with the guys looking like they're, I don't know, stereotypical tough guys. They have to be everyday people. The girlfriend has to be there, and it's about the consumer, and Snickers satisfies. This spot was so great. I mean, remember, it's a candy bar, and it's being positioned as like an energy bar, a sports bar. It started the hangry movement. And 6 years later, it was so popular. You might have seen the Brady Bunch version where you have Steve Buscemi playing, you know, doing the Marsha line. Like, it's almost sexist, but then there are other applications for it. Snickers ended up running versions of this ad in 80 countries. I was working with the Russian market when they did their version, Singapore. I mean, it just sticks with something that's pure and real. But at the end of the day, Betty White delivering, "That's not what your girlfriend said." To me, it makes me laugh every time. She's just brilliant. And it's a brilliant work from BBDO.
Other thoughts from the panel?
Yeah, I was so excited to hear that someone on the panel had a story about this ad because it is absolutely iconic. The entire series of ads is iconic, but Betty White was by far the best. And objectively, it's just like one of the best of all time. But every single time they use that device of having the celebrity appearance, Aretha Franklin was also so good. And it was just so charming and so well executed, and absolutely made me realize that I suffer from hanger all the time. I think I become Fran Drescher when I'm hangry, but I don't reach for a Snickers because of the weight I put on during COVID. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about the influence of an ad, I've certainly had clients say, "I want, you know, my brief, I want the Snickers ad, but for my brand." And I think when you do work as iconic as this, that's what happens, right? Then everyone wants to try to figure out, how do we state a problem that we solve with our brand? But obviously there's a lot that goes into telling a story like this. And Jen, I think your point on talent and casting here is just so spot on. Betty White was a legend. I think that there's, you know, very few people who have pulled that off, but the concept, the insight at its core is just like spot on, perfect.
It's not something any other candy brand could say, you know, at a time when candy brands were having this like huge resurgence in terms of creativity. And yeah, there's no other candy bar that could do that. And, you know, to have such a beautiful collaboration between strategy and creative, and to have them tee that up. I'd heard that story before, and it's powerful. You can do something for over a decade and have it be such a strong creative idea that, like what you're saying, Brian, you can just rattle those things off. And that analogy is so strong that they did it with celebrities, non-celebs. We're always tasked now to be not just culturally relevant, but we want to change culture. You're like, okay, cool, I got that. But in this case, it's, you know, they did it, and they weren't, you know, it wasn't on the brief. They just, you know, it was born from the idea. It's very cool.
Yeah, you look at brands like MasterCard. Priceless comes from the same place. And the strategist for Priceless did the same thing. He said, the credit card doesn't matter. I mean, imagine walking into a client and saying, you don't matter, which was very risky. Mm-hmm. And saying the transactions don't matter. These moments matter with people and what they're experiencing. You're just there for the ride. That's why that campaign could, you know, be done all over the globe too. Like, that's when you get something really special, something really special.
Well, I think that's a good segue, Jen, into sort of the next part of our night here. So audience, I'm gonna allow you to participate however you'd like. You can either raise your hand and ask a question. I'm gonna tee off a couple to start. We can unmute you. We're happy to do that. If you don't wanna speak, throw some questions in the chat. We'll just keep it conversational and have a little fun talking sort of about the future and maybe some cool things that the panelists tonight are thinking about that will get some ideas flowing. I wanted to kick things off by circling back to some of our Gen Z jokes and talking about TikTok, which was the most downloaded app in 2021. Has over 1 billion users. I'm sure that number is growing even probably since we pulled that. Just want to get your take on how user-generated content and mediums like this that are disrupting and changing are impacting advertising today.
Yeah, I think one thing we were really surprised about is that there were no TikTok influencers in any of the spots this year. I was expecting somebody like a Tabitha Brown, who now has a sponsorship with McCormick, and there are all these just much more interesting people doing very everyday things and becoming very relevant and real, which I think is why I'm personally reacted to so many celebrities that I didn't want to see. And I just think those conversations that are happening in video on TikTok are very interesting, especially as they've extended from their minute to 3 minute. It's giving people the opportunity to respond in video and connect on a wide range of things. A couple of brands like Avocados from Mexico tried to do like a TikTok mix-up during the Super Bowl. It didn't seem to work very well. I was watching and nobody was really engaging, but I like the fact that brands are trying, but I think TikTok is much more relevant with just people.
Yeah, I think there's like what TikTok has done and what influencer marketing has done for short form video and for user generated content. And it's just, I think that it's really interesting and it's really exciting. So for a lot of our clients that we launched a lot of brands. And so when they're in that small and scrappy state, working with Ariana Grande is not in the cards. But working with 20 or so like Ariana Ventis, that is a possibility. So you can work with these people that are smaller but still have a very devoted following and get this brand new brand some traction and help them get moving. I think for advertising, like you were saying, Jen, it's like this is about people versus brands. So trying to insert your brand into that space with Gen Z where they're so skeptical. And they're so quick to be like, no, something's weird. I don't like this. This is sus, as the kids say. This is I don't like this. This is real. If it's a human that is doing something where it's like, I know that person. I want to try that thing. That looks delicious. It looks like, you know, it's a beautiful shade of lipstick. That's different because it's like, projecting themselves into a space where they know and understand someone. It's introducing a messiness that's more acceptable, perhaps paved the way for things like Coinbase for it to happen, where it's like, it's okay that it's not hyper polished with Arnold Schwarzenegger. It can be messy in the effort of achieving authenticity.
I didn't see very many brands take advantage of TikTok this year. I think one that did a great job was Taco Bell. So earlier in the week, I had seen in some of my doom scrolling, had seen some teasing of from Doja Cat of, you know, something coming from Taco Bell, like not a ton of detail. And then later on, that kind of story played out through the Super Bowl in a really fun spot. So I think that they were one of the few examples where as a channel, we know tons of people, and not just Gen Z, are on TikTok. Actually, the pandemic, I think, brought a lot of people to the platform that otherwise would not have cared in the least bit. But I think that to Jen's point, it's a tricky, very, very grassroots place where things can go wrong really quickly. So I think Taco Bell did a great job of using paid ads on TikTok that threaded through a story, but I didn't see tons of other things. I saw in the chat someone mentioned a pregame. I wasn't aware of that, but there, I'm sure there's stuff happening. But it's just interesting to see how attention shifts, you know, when everything's going on.
Great, thanks. Let's shift to maybe another topic that we covered earlier tonight and go into a little more detail. Wondering what, how does the advertising industry need to focus on DEI and inclusion of all kinds? I think that was sort of something we lightly dabbled with the Google ad, and just, you know, any other thoughts when it comes to that topic, panelists?
You know, I think, you know, I work as a creative director, art director, and so I often, you know, I'm going to come at it from a creative perspective, but I think when we're there's a few things that I think we're doing as creatives, like, you know, as, you know, ad agencies, as companies, you know, in recruiting, that are definitely starting to shift. And I think that there's there are even little things that we've done that have made a really big difference. Like, you know, for like 12, 15 years when we were casting a spot, we would want to be inclusive and we didn't really know how to do it, or how we were excluding people, say ethnically ambiguous, or open to all ethnicities. And what that second one would do is it would, you would get mostly white people and then a handful of people of color in a cast session. And it was, there were a couple of things going on. One was that, you know, the more white people get experience, like the more jobs they book and the more talented they become. If it's, you know, it's even harder to get, you know, and there aren't a lot of roles that were specifically cast as diverse. And so it's kind of like perpetuating this, like, but there's no talent, there's no talent. What we do now that's been really powerful is we're very specific and intentional for each role. So we'll say we're going to cast this couple as African-American, where this role is specifically Latino or Asian-American. This one is open to all, you know, kind of like, you know, open. This one specifically should be Caucasian. And we're starting to have some really difficult conversations, which I think is the key, you know, and it's not like, it's not always easy to say, like, what does this line sound like when it comes from, you know, from a white person versus a person of color? It's and to raise that in a room of people that also don't know the answer, you know, like we're sitting here on an all white panel. It's hard to talk, you know, it's hard to talk about these, it's hard to face these things, but it has become a conversation at Arnold that's been very, like, become much more comfortable and fluid because we kind of got through a lot of hard conversations. And one of the things the company's done, and this is stuff that kind of has to come from the top down, it's to change culture. It's hard to change a company. It comes from all of the employees, and definitely the culture and the energy and how people like to work, but it has like this particular thing came from the top down. So we started something called the Inclusion Council, and it's a group, I think it must be like 12 or 15 people that review almost everything that goes out the door. So they see, they see work before it goes to the client. They see pitch work before it gets presented. And what happens is it's made up of a group of, in terms of like gender, sexual identity, race, all very diverse, different ages. And they can come back and it's filtered through one person, and that one person will say, okay, they'll consolidate all of the feedback, and it remains anonymous because it's very hard to be the one person that's always, speaking out. It, becomes like, hard for their career. They're putting their, their own career at jeopardy by, so it takes the heat off of any individual person. It just says the council, this is what the council flagged. This was something they noticed. And I've done that and submitted work, because we can also kind of on our own say like, I don't know, something feels a little off about this, and submit it. And they'll, and often those hunches are right. I think what's better is that they're catching stuff that nobody sees. And so that's been a pretty powerful force. We started another thing at Arnold. Like we have a lot of our work is comedy driven, and our chief creative officer, Sean McBride, is a comedy writer and is always looking for writers and all talent that don't come from the traditional places. So a lot of times in advertising, your writers and designers and art directors will come from a portfolio school, which is great, but it trains people to think in a really specific sort of way. So, he's a bunch of times just found people that he thought were really funny on Twitter, found stand-up comics and, from wherever, and given him a job. Like, if you can write it, if you can crack a joke, we can teach you how to turn it into a 30-second spot. But we just started something a little bit more intentional called the Arnold Institute for the Comedically Gifted, which is, intentionally like, self-aware and kind of self-deprecating, but it's like a 2-month program where you can come, get paid to write, and then they turn into jobs, and we're looking for comedians, diverse backgrounds. So actually I'm shooting a spot tomorrow with someone that was like the first person to officially get hired in the program, is Boston comic, super funny guy. There's one other thing that I've seen that's really cool. It's been around probably for like at least a year and a half, and I'll put the I'll find the link before we get off, and I'll put it in the chat, but it's called Coffee. A lot of times our networks look a lot like us. So when we say like, well, we need to be more diverse, like, how are we going to get more diverse? We're like, well, I don't know anybody. We're like, there is nobody, there's no talent. I mean, there is, like, we need to nurture it, but there's definitely talent out there. Don't know where to find it. And someone started a hashtag on LinkedIn called Coffee. And you put it in as the hashtag in your profile, but you also put it as a job. So when you want to search for a role, I mean, there's strategy. I think it's leans a little more creative, but it's interesting to take a look. So if if you're looking to hire space, and you want to hire a diverse role, then you can search LinkedIn through that, and it doesn't rely on your like personal, professional, collegiate network connections to do that, or, paying to go through a recruiter who's reaching out to a lot of people. So that was a pretty, like, I don't know, I think some of those are like, even just the things that appear small, like that LinkedIn hashtag, have a pretty profound effect, and been able to connect with some really talented people. And so it's worth, I don't know if anyone is in a hiring position, but it's worth taking a look.
It's not an easy solve. Because until, as Sarah was saying, we hire a more diverse leadership base, we tend to hire the people we know. This is, especially in agency, you're hiring people you've worked with before. One person moves to another agency, they take their whole gang with them. I mean, I followed people from agency to agency to agency, and it was all women. And so the women all stuck together because they all came from Ogilvy, and Shelley Lazarus the biggest person in advertising, and she was on her own for decades. The only environment that I've ever seen where you really get a diverse group of people is when you're working at a global agency and you're forced by your client to start to get a more international perspective, which forces people to move and work in different departments and work in different environments and start to see things in different ways. But it's not an easy way to do it. And we have to really get leadership and then really build from the ground up and hire people who are great. It's just about hiring great people.
Yeah, it is. And it's for anybody here that came from a design background. So there was I think it was in 2021, there was a repeat. There was an event that was based on a talk that Maurice Cherry originally gave, which was Where Are All the Black Designers? And he shared a statistic that was saying that only 5% of graphic designers are Black, which is wild. And then essentially broke down all of the reasons why that is. And a lot of it has to do with the education system. A lot of it has to do with opportunities not being extended to high school and college kids at schools with higher populations of people of color versus schools that historically have more white students. But it also has to do with the fact that, like you're saying, Jen, those positions are not filled by people of color. So when people do not see themselves represented, they are afraid of being tokenized. They're afraid of not being included. Then it's not something they want. So we are a growing agency. We're always hiring. And it is something that I very specifically focus on when I'm trying to hire someone in a strategy role. Not too long ago, we brought on a young designer, and he is a person of color, and he is also queer. And when we were just casually talking, and he said, "Do you want to know why what the reason was that I came when I worked at 36? Is because I saw a picture of you on Instagram, and you had a fan. And by that, I mean a hand fan, and it was black with bright pink letters on it that said fierce." So he saw it and he was like, "This is a gay man that is in leadership at this agency. So I should go there because that's a safe space for me." So, and I was just being messy as hell on Instagram. I was unaware that our social media manager at the time was going to post that to our account. And I was like, well, that happened. And it was like several of my clients have now commented on it, so we can't exactly do anything about it. But ultimately, was that the image that I necessarily wanted? No, because I looked ridiculous. But in the end, it essentially demonstrated that it was showing people and minorities that they were welcome in this place because someone that looked like them or was like them was driving the agency. So like everybody has said, when you have people that are minorities or women, differently abled, whatever, you are showing those other people that are like them that this is a welcome place for them, and making opportunities for them is the only way to create profound change.
It's a great story. I love that.
There's a lot of work to do. I think that's the theme. I did want to give a shout out to my colleague who mentioned this in the chat, but there's a great organization there's many great organizations, but one called HUE. We are HUE.org, and they're a nonprofit that connects talent and people of color to mentorship opportunities and more. So I think the more that we can find great organizations like that and partner with them, the better.
Thank you, everyone. I think this is a great place to start to wind down our conversation tonight. These are all values that we are trying to spread at AMA Boston, despite your point, Sarah, about maybe the lack of diversity in some ways on this screen, always room for improvement. We actually also do have a DEI leadership on our team, and we're looking for more people to join that team. As Chris mentioned earlier, also, if you just like marketing, come hang with us. It's a little different virtually. We have fun and we're in person. Normally we have a beer once a month, all those sorts of things. But if you want to just learn from peers, get some mentorship, hone in on new skills, maybe learn about how websites work, things like that maybe you're not doing in your job and you'd like to, definitely volunteer or message us and get involved. And I just want to give a big shout out to all of our panelists tonight and Scrubby as well for delivering some great messages and having a lot of fun. I know it's getting late. Actually, Chris was going to pull up an encore ad based on your discussion earlier, but you guys, thank you again for joining, and we'll be sharing the recording if you want to send it around to colleagues, and definitely hope to see you soon.
Thank you for hosting us, Megan.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for a great night, and definitely hit us up on LinkedIn if you guys want to connect and chat.
The first ever all-electric Chevy Silverado. A whole new truck for a whole new generation.
Now we can all go watch The Sopranos.
Definitely. All right, well, we're gonna close down shop and let everyone get back to their night and their lives. But thanks again, and we'll see you soon.